All right, my friends, today we are talking to Henry Akins about blue belts. That's right, Henry Akins, blue belts. We have 5 questions to ask Henry Akins about blue belts. I know you're going to enjoy the interview, and I hope you learn something. Do you have any requirements for a blue belt? And if so, what are they?
So I have some very, very general requirements. And, for me, for my own personal students, some of it is based on performance and obviously knowledge. But, I feel that by the time someone gets a blue belt, they have a basic understanding, a general understanding of a few takedowns. So they're comfortable on their feet. They're comfortable being able to take the fight to the ground. And they have a basic understanding of all of the main positions in jiu-jitsu. So the mount position, they're comfortable maintaining mount. They're comfortable escaping the mount. They're comfortable maintaining cross-side. They're comfortable escaping cross-side, half guard, and the back. So that's kind of, for me, I guess the blue belt is kind of the first step, into the journey of all your other belts. And so I feel what the most important thing in getting to the blue belt is just having the basic understanding of the positions and maybe, a handful of submissions, a handful of maybe basic submissions that they can go to from each position. So it's not super specific for me. It's a little bit more generalized. But yeah, that's my kind of requirement for my students is I feel that they are good on their feet, they have a few takedowns, and that, they have a basic understanding of how to maintain dominant positions and how to escape bad positions.
How important is it for a student to be able to defend their belt?
That's a kind of a tough question. I mean, for me, I don't feel it's that important. I mean, because, and here's the reason, is because we all make mistakes. And when you're doing jiu-jitsu, especially at that level, if you make a mistake, you can get caught. So I think in general, yes, a blue belt should outperform white belts, but then there's several other things to take into consideration. You have, if you have a 50-year-old guy, a 55-year-old guy that's, a dad, he gets to train twice a week and he's maybe a doctor or something like that, there's going to be different standards for him and different expectations for him than you have a 22-year-old kid that's an NCAA wrestling champion, So I do believe there's different standards involved when you're talking about different students. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, I think that they should in general outperform, but I don't think it's a must. Like, I don't think that, oh gosh, he got tapped out by a white, but he's not a blue belt. Does that make sense?
Yeah, things happen on the mat, and some of the white belts are not the same as other white belts, and there's also that training aspect that you might be more tired than them, and you might be pushing yourself. Training with upper belts too.
There's so many different factors, into getting caught. I mean, and you see this all the time too. There's certain guys that specialize in specific techniques. Some guys, like, this is really common where they have like an amazing triangle guy that's really tall and like he develops how to use the triangle and how to set up the triangle. That's his kind of go-to move, and he's a white belt, and he catches a lot of guys. He can catch a lot of guys, more advanced belts in his move. In other positions, he's not as strong, he's as weak, but he's really dangerous from one position. So, he doesn't have a well-rounded game, but that can also be a possibility. So he's a little bit better in one position. So maybe he is a blue belt in that position, but in every other position, he's a white belt. Does that make sense?
Yeah, looking at the overall game.
Right.
For the student themselves, should they feel something off when they do get caught by a lower belt, or is that just part of the training process?
Yes, I think it's a great thing to be upset and discouraged, and because that's what really drives us to get better. People think of it as something negative, like to be upset or discouraged or frustrated, but it's those feelings and those emotions that push us to achieve more and to get better. If we were content, with, okay, the guy got tapped and I'm cool with that, I'm fine. It doesn't motivate you as much. So definitely. I think those feelings and those emotions that you experience, that's what drives people to achieve more.
Do you think that could possibly play in the opposite way, where if I'm a blue belt, I'm kind of tired, I know this white belt's a handful, I'll just roll with somebody else and avoid him, or should you just go ahead and grab that person and roll with them anyway?
It's always. I always tell my students the best time to train is when you're tired. That way you're not using your physicality. So obviously, for each individual, what goes through their head in that moment will be different. Certain people prefer to challenge themselves, and so obviously, it's as an instructor, I would always suggest to my students, yes, train when you're tired, even if the guy's fresh, even if he's extremely physical. Learn how to defend yourself when you're tired against someone that's fresh and physical, because that could be a possibility in a real situation. But yeah, what actually goes through the individual's head during that time, sure, a lot of people will back down to that challenge, But yeah, of course, it's always important to challenge yourself. And if you mess up, who cares? Big deal. It's an opportunity for you to learn something. That's every time you tap, every time you lose, every time or what people consider losing is just basically opportunities to learn. It's only a failure if you don't gain anything from it.
Do the intangibles, like somebody being a good teammate, having a good attitude, somebody who's helping others on the mat, does that come into play when you're promoting somebody to a blue belt?
Not so much to a blue belt, because a blue belt is a very, very kind of beginner. From white to blue, I think people are just really starting to understand the martial arts, or jiu-jitsu specifically. It's kind of the beginner phase. As a teacher, as an instructor, I always encourage. I think the instructor always sets the example for the students. So how you treat other people, that's how your students are going to learn to treat other people on the mats too. So I think a lot of that falls into. The other thing too is, as an instructor, we've had to weed people out from the gym that I felt were not good teammates, that did not have good intentions. So that happens a lot too. And obviously that's a little bit more extreme cases, but for me, almost all of my students are good people, good human beings. If there's a person that I feel is destructive to the team environment, it has nothing to do with promoting them. If that's how I feel, then after a conversation or two, then they're out of the gym. It's not even a question of whether they're getting promoted or not promoted. It's just whether they're good, if they're a good fit for the team, or whether they're not a good fit for the team. And if they're not, then they're asked to leave, because and we've had that experience before. One person can kind of ruin the whole environment, can really ruin the whole vibe.
Yeah, it sounds like you, instead of worrying about promoting somebody as a blue belt and see if they have the character that you're looking for, that's taken care of long before that it's to that point.
Yeah, exactly. Like, by that point, I'm not going to keep someone on the team long enough for them to, I'm going to promote them to blue belt, but they're not a good training partner. That's the thing is, everyone there is there to learn and have fun. And so if you have one person there that's super aggro, super aggressive, trying to hurt people, his training partners, that creates a really, really negative environment. It's completely against kind of my beliefs, which is jiu-jitsu. We all come to jiu-jitsu to get a good workout, to learn how to protect ourselves and to have fun. And so, those people get weeded out long before.
So it sounds like with that type of individual, you kind of pull them aside, talk to them, hey, this is not really what we're about, and give them a chance to understand what we're doing here. And then, hopefully they change what they're doing. And if not, they need to find a different location to train in that way.
Right. And and usually it's one or two conversations. You'll find out that something's going on, or or when you watch them. Sometimes some student will bring up, "Hey, I was training with this guy, and he, put his knuckles into my jaw, or he started, driving his elbow in," and I'll have to mention something like, "Hey, that's not cool," or guys are going really hard. And that's the thing is, you have to really see what the person's intentions are, because sometimes it's non-intentional. Sometimes, and a lot of people, this is the case, they first start training, there's a lot of panic and fear within them. And they feel that they have to go strong and or be really explosive or be really physical in order to survive. And so that's part of the thing for being an instructor, is to really help guide the students. Like, hey, it's not necessary for you to, be so tense, to be so explosive, to try to go crazy, to try to survive. It works against you in the long run. It slows down your learning. It creates an environment for injury. So, there are certain drills that I do where I have people go 100%, but those are very, very specific drills, and they're positional drills, where basically people are told to go 100%, and it's very, very specific, because I also want to create an environment where my students learn to deal with someone that is spazzing, because that's exactly what's going to happen on the street. But those are very, very controlled positional trainings, where I say, okay, so you're going to go 100%, you're not going to use any jiu-jitsu, you're just going to try to freak out, the main thing is creating an environment where it's safe for everyone to train.
Henry, thinking back to the many blue belts you've given over the years, do you ever regret giving somebody a blue belt?
No, and we actually, it's funny that you asked this question, because we just did a belt promotion right before Christmas. And I was having a talk to some of the other coaches and trainers, and we were talking about, who we felt were ready to be promoted and stuff like that. And there's certain people that, when the belt promotion comes, they're ready for the belt. They've surpassed the belt. Like, yes, this guy should definitely be a blue belt. There's other people that what happens when you give them the belt, when they're presented with the belt, they actually grow into it. It gives them the confidence. It builds them, and they feel so it's really different with each individual. That's the crazy thing with human nature, is we're such different in how we operate and how we deal with different experiences in life. Some people are extremely motivated, driven. They don't need a belt to feel better. They don't need a belt, Other people, they need more encouragement. And a lot of times by, giving them a belt, and I don't give away belts easy by any means, but, it's people that have put in the time, and they put in the dedication, and they've put in the effort, and, you see they've struggled a lot, but they're not quite there yet. A lot of times when you give them the belt, they rise to the occasion. And that happens a lot. You see with competitors too. There's certain guys that are competing, and when they train in the gym, they don't do well, but all of a sudden when it comes time for competition or for a tournament, there's pressures on, they do extremely well, And so I think sometimes you give someone a belt and they feel like, oh, geez, now I'm a blue belt. I can't let these white belts tap me out, and they perform so much better.
That's interesting. Thinking back in my days of a blue belt, I was always under a little bit of stress that I didn't want to disappoint my coach. And it sounds like that's really not an issue with you as far as your blue belts. You give them the blue belt, and you probably have some expectations of what they're doing, but they either rise up to that occasion or they're already there, but you don't look at them like, oh man, that guy, he's really letting me down. It sounds more like that you're always seem to be pretty happy with them.
Yeah, for the most part, I don't put too much. The idea is not to put too much stress on the students or expectation, because it's a constant learning. It's in jiu-jitsu, you're constantly learning, constantly growing, constantly improving, constantly trying to get better. And as you make mistakes, which everybody does, no matter who you are, no matter how good you are, hopefully you learn from it. And if not, you're going to keep repeating the same mistakes until you do learn. So, yeah, for me and my particularly my students, I want to push them to get better. I want to see them achieve the best that they can. But I also, if they get tapped out or if they lose, it's not a big deal. It's part of the learning process.
Do you have any advice for the new blue belt? My
advice for the new blue belts is the same for any belt, is to basically focus on the fundamentals. That's your foundation, and that is, if you have strong foundation, strong fundamentals, it will carry you extremely far in jiu-jitsu. I think I see a lot of schools now, white belts and blue belts trying to do very, very advanced techniques, advanced moves. I mean, the only reason that these guys are able to do those advanced things is because they have a very strong foundation already. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's the same in any sport or anything that people try to do. Initially is develop a strong base, develop a strong foundation, and then you can build from that.
I think one of the traps with right on that blue belt age, you're still a beginner, but you're kind of getting the hang of things, and you might pick up a trick or a technique that's really that you're really not able to handle 100%, but it might work occasionally. So you really think this is the next best thing, and you end up really putting a lot of time and energy to something before actually working on the more important fundamentals, like you're talking about.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, and a lot of times people feel that the fundamentals don't work at the higher level because that's the first thing you learn. Is the first thing that people start to learn to defend. So they feel like, oh, this doesn't really work, but that's the thing. I really encourage people not to give up on those fundamentals because they work at the highest level. It's just like in basketball, say, for example. You practice your layups, you practice your free throws, those are the fundamentals. You practice how to dribble. And once you have that down, everything builds from that. You can't start doing stuff like what Kobe Bryant would do or Michael Jordan would do without that foundation. Once you have that foundation, then you can start to dribble up and dunk and do all kinds of crazy shots and fadeaways and stuff like that. But, develop the foundation first.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you very much for hopping on here with me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
That wraps up our interview with Henry Akins. The good news is there's much more out there. I've interviewed 5 other black belts and asked them the same 5 questions. We have Tim Sled, Matt Thornton, Bernardo Faria, Dan Koval, and John Will. A lot of knowledge about blue belts, and they're all happy to share it with you today. So check out the links below for those other interviews. Hope you like the video. Comment down below if you have anything to add to the conversation, and subscribe to the channel. Stay sweaty, my friends.